Topic 2.4, segments and midpoints. This could be referenced Holt, Chapter 1, Section 6, pages 43 through 44. Segments and midpoints. Midpoint of a segment is a point on a line that is equal distance from both endpoints. A point is the midpoint of a segment if it is between the two endpoints and the distance from the point to each endpoint are equal. Okay, take a look at this. This shows that PM is equal distance as MQ, notated by these marks, and that means that those distances are equal. This distance PM and MQ are equal. You can find the midpoint of a segment that is either on a number line or on a coordinate plane. The midpoint on a number line, this is important, you got to memorize this. You're taking the 2 points, adding them together and dividing them into. So you could have 2 coordinate points. The A and B are the coordinates, and then the endpoints, like this one, would be whatever that number is and that number. Okay, example 1. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of FG. Well, F is at -3. and G is at +3. Well, if you add these two together and divide by 2, you've got 0 divided by 2. Well, anytime you have 0 in your numerator, the answer is 0, because 0 times 2 would give me 0. So the midpoint between F and G would be right there. Okay, example 2. Find the coordinates of the midpoint of AB. A is at, be careful, 3.5, and you're adding that to 3. Divide this by 2. 3.5 plus 3 is -0.5. Divide that by 2, and you get -1.4. Example 3. If the coordinates of a midpoint of a segment AB on a number line is 3 and A is a -2, find the coordinates of B. Well, be careful here because you already know the midpoint. They've told you that the midpoint on the line is 3. So if 3 is my midpoint, then you have to use the formula of the midpoint is equal to the 2 endpoints divided by 2. You fill in the M here, and that would be, you have 3, is equal to, all we know is one of them, -2 plus what we don't know. And all of that divided by 2. Anytime you have a fraction in an expression where an unknown, you want to get rid of it. Well, the denominator has a 2, so if we multiply by 2 on both sides, sometimes I show this with a 2 over 1 just to help see that these two cross out. You now have 6 is equal to a -2 plus B. Add 2 to both sides, and the answer for B would be 8. So that's what you're going to do when you've actually been given the midpoint already. Okay, midpoint on a coordinate plane. If you've got the X and a Y, then the formula chart most of the time will be given to you. You're combining your X's, you're adding the X1 and the X2 and dividing by 2 for your X point. And for your Y coordinate point, you're going to take your Y1 plus your Y2 and divide it by 2. Let's do an example. For example 4, find the midpoint between a -11, 3, and 8, -7. Just like we did on distance formula, mark x1, y1. This just helps when you're setting them into your formula. x2, y2. So if we're going to put our x's together, we've got a -11 plus 8 divided by 2. And our y's, you have 3 plus a -7 divided by 2. This is going to give you a -3/2, and this is going to give you -4/2. If we want to keep that like in our coordinate point, you can show it like this. There's your x, there's your y. If we want to just change this to a decimal, this is a -1.5 for your x value, and your y value, -4 divided by 2, is a -2 for your y value. Okay, one more example. Again, if you'll label them first, being x1, y1, x2, y2. Your x's, 3 plus 7 divided by 2. -6 plus 2 are your y's. Divide that by 2. 7 plus 3 is 10. 10 divided by 2. -6 plus 2 is a -4. Divide that by 2. So your x becomes 5. And this is your y. That coordinate point will be -2. Example 6. This one, let's see. You know your x, y, find the coordinate of B. So again, you've been told that M is the midpoint of AB. So if this is your midpoint, you've already been given the answer of what the midpoint is. This is the midpoint. Okay, so one way of doing this is, again, to just fill it in for the formula. And if M is equal to the 3M, you've got, we know that 0 plus what we don't know, our x2, and all of that divided by 2 is going to be equal to 3. Why? Because 3 is the midpoint value here. So midpoint is equal to their x values added together divided by 2. Well, here's the fraction again. We want to get rid of this 2, so we're going to multiply by 2 on both sides. So when you multiply by 2 on both sides, you're going to have 6 is equal to 0 plus x2. So our x2 value is just going to be 6. All right, for our y value was 5, so 5 is equal to 1 plus y2. All of that divided by 2. Again, you have a denominator, so I probably should show this a different color. If I multiply, balance the equation, multiply the same thing on both sides, that cancels out. Just like I guess I could have shown that that canceled out over there. Alright, so this is actually going to be 10 is equal to 1 plus your y2. So you're going to subtract 1 on both sides, so your y2 is going to be equal to 9. You always want to show this in a coordinate point. This is my x and this is my y, so B is 6, 9. Alright, one last question. Again, you've been given the midpoint. So the midpoint is the 4 and the -1. So 4 is equal to 3 plus x squared. Oops, sorry, x with a square on the bottom. It's not an exponent, it's a subscript. Again, multiply by 2 on both sides, balancing the equation. These 2 go away. 8 is equal to 3 plus your x that we're trying to find. You subtract 3 on both sides to get your x squared. So that's going to be 5. Subtract 3 on both sides. Okay, last one. You've got y. Again, this is our midpoint. The negative 1 is my y, so I have the y value here. I guess I should label it y1. This was my x1. Is negative 2 plus what we don't know, all divided by 2. That is the y-coordinate midpoint. So what do we do to get rid of the 2 on the denominator? Is multiply by 2 on both sides. Negative 2 is equal to negative 2 plus y. You add 2 to both sides. That will go away. So your y2 is equal to 0. So your coordinate point for R is 5, 0. And that is all for topic 2-4.